Yesterday we have seen classes and objects, introduction to the classes and objects. So we discussed what do you mean by class, right? So we know that in a JavaScript we can create object in three ways. Object literal notation, constructor function, and the third way which is given to you by ES6, right? This is nothing but what the third way. So let's create first a new folder. Here I can say day 42, sorry, day 43. And here we can say animal.js. And here we can say what? Animal.js. So when you say class, what exactly this is? Remember that we are thinking in the terms of object-oriented principles. What do you mean by object-oriented principles now? When you talk about object-oriented principles, you need to think in the terms of real-time entities, right? The way we have a real-time entities like animal. So here I can say class animal, class what? Animal I'm having. And in this class would be having state. This class would be having state and behavior. What do you mean by state?
Property.
State is nothing but what? The properties. Behaviors are nothing but what? Methods or the functions. So what animal would be having? Animal would be having legs. So here we have something called as constructor. Constructor is a special type of function. So whenever you create the object like const an is equals to new animal, const an is equals to what? New animal. Can you see the name, the class name and this method name? Can you see? If I remove this thing, here you will find this is something called as method. Here you will find this is something called as method. If I remove the new, this becomes something called as method. But you don't have this method inside this animal class. Then from where this is coming? This is coming from the constructor. The minute you call something like this, it will invoke the constructor. Correct?
Yes.
It will invoke what? Constructor. Then we had seen what do you mean by constructor? At the time of object creation, if you want to set some data, for that purpose we will use constructor, right? So animal would be having this dot legs, and here you can give a static value 4, and this dot you can say eyes 2, correct? So this is a static value, but at the time of, so from here I can say 3 legs or 2 legs, 2 eyes. I want to do something like this, and that's why here I can say legs. It is not necessary, variable name can be absolutely anything, right? But just to understand which variable is used for which assignment, we are using that part. Eyes, and here we can say legs and eyes, correct? So this 2 becomes this legs, This 2 becomes what? This eyes. So here you can say an1. See, you can create object in 3 ways. Animal, and here I can say 4 eyes, sorry, 4 legs, 2 eyes, correct? This is another animal. So what is constructor? At the time of object creation. So for creating object we use new and we use the constructor. So whenever you call this method whose name is, method name is same as animal, so internally it will call this constructor, right? And it will assign this data. Now this is the state. State is nothing but what? Property. State is nothing but what? Property or field, etc. Now what is the behavior? You can say run. Remember that there is no function keyword.
Yes.
Behavior is nothing but what? Method or function. So here we can say this dot legs plus plus. So we are incrementing some random thing we are doing. You can say sleep and behavior. Can you see? Behavior works on the state.
Yes.
So here we can say sleep, this dot eyes is equals to 0. Here we can say, and wake up, this dot eyes is equals to 1, something like this. You getting my point?
Yes, sir.
So behavior is the function which is working on the state. That can be anything. Which is working on what? State. So when you say class, it is a actual representation. Now consider that your client, you are developing application or you are working in a company and you are developing a game, and in that game there is an actual animal kind of character is there. You need to work with what? Animal character. So instead you to write all this thing in single JavaScript file, you think animal as a class, you think animal as a constructor function, you will think animal as class, you will think animal as a class, one class. So your client will say that okay, animal can sleep, animal can run, okay, animal can sleep, animal can run, animal would be having eyes and animal would be having legs, animal would be having legs, animal would be having eyes, animal can run, animal can sleep, animal can wake up. So this kind of text data your client have given you, and from that text data you created a class animal for your game. Right? For your game you created this kind of thing, correct? So whenever you say animal, animal would be a class. Whenever you say class, it is a real-time entity, right? So whenever you say class, actually it is the structure of this object. So whenever you say class animal, it is what? A structure of the object. So whenever you say an1 is equals to new animal, so this an1 would be having all the things that you have written over here. So it would be having legs, for example. Can you see an1 dot eyes? Can you see here you can access an1 dot access. Even you can have an1 dot run. This is a more sophisticated way to work with your code. an1 dot run. an1 dot sleep, an1 dot. Similarly, here you can say an2 dot sleep and an2 dot wake up, an2 dot wake up. You getting my point? Animal, run, sleep, wake up. So instead you to do these things separately without a class, you have created one class. One benefit of this, creating this, it is a scoped. Scope of this run method is within these two curly brackets only, right? And run method is accessing all the state variables or the properties. Run can access this dot legs, sleep can access this dot eyes, and the scope of all these variables, is limited inside these two brackets, is limited inside what? These two brackets. So there is no problem of having multiple variables with the same name. Whenever we use the DOM, whenever we start the DOM, you will get to know about this thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, class animal, this constructor, run, sleep, wake up. So we discussed about the scoping. Also, we discussed about what? Scoping also. We discussed about behavior. We discussed about the state variable. We discussed about object creation, new plus animal. Internal memory location would be happening, and new will do some specific things. What things new will do, we will see shortly. Okay, so let's try to add the document, classes and objects. Just a minute.
So this code can we run?
Yeah, we can run. I'll run just a minute. Okay, so there is no problem in running. Cd dot dot cd day 43 node animal.js. Presently we don't have anything to print, right? And that's why it is happening like this. So okay, so when you define the class, so when you say class, just a minute. When you say class in ECMA script 2015, yeah. So in the context of programming, so first we will say H1. So first we will see, you can say basics of the class. In the context of programming, class is a blueprint or a template for creating object. It defines type of object with properties and methods that can be shared among the multiple instances of that type. Can you see an1 and an2 multiple instances? So they are sharing run, wake up, and like that. In the context of programming, class is a blueprint or a template for creating object. It defines a type of object with properties and methods that can be shared along multiple instances of that type. Classes are the fundamental things sorry. Classes are fundamental concept in object oriented programming, a programming paradigm that revolves around the core concept of objects, right? Now here are some key points about the classes that you need to know. First thing, it's a blueprint or a template. Class is a blueprint or a template. A class acts as, here you can say, a class acts as a blueprint or a template for creating object. It defines the structure, properties, and behavior for that object of that class will have. Then there comes something called as objects. Here we can say objects. Objects are instances of the class. Object represent the class. If you see here, object an, right, represent the class. Now what do you mean by represent the class? All the things in the class are available in the object. So objects are instances of the class. When you create the object based on a class, you are instantiating that class to create the specific instance with its own unique data. Then we have discussed something called as constructor in a class. A constructor is a special method that automatically calls. A constructor is a special method within a class that is automatically called when object is created. It is used to initialize the object properties and set up the initial state, right? Initial state at the time of object creation. If you want to set some data, you will use the constructor. Properties are, here you can say, the variables or data members associated with the class, right? They represents characteristics or attributes of the object created from that particular class. Properties, or we can state, here we can say methods, or we can say behavior. So methods are the functions within the class. Methods are functions that are defined within the class. They represent behavior or the actions. They represent behavior or actions that object of the class can perform, right? It's a blueprint, object, constructor, and the properties. Okay, hello.
Yes, sir.
So simple example. A simple example would be like this. Correct? Simple example of the class would be like this. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Classes, objects. Now what I wanted to show you is one thing, what exactly new keyword does. So here we can say h1 new keyword. So what new keyword does in JavaScript? Just a minute. new keyword. So here we have used one new keyword. So I need to explain that new keyword to you first. So when you say new keyword, right, in the context of ES6 classes and objects, in the context of ES6 classes and the object, the new keyword is used to create the instances of the class. Now, here we can say, so here I can say basics of class. Now, sorry, H2, not H2, it should be H1. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
What is object? Now, an object of the class, here you can say what is object of the class. An object of the class is an instance of that class. See here, an is one of the instance of the class. In the object oriented programming, class serves as a blueprint or a template for creating objects. When you create an object based on the class, see, when you create an object based on the class, you are instantiating that class to create the specific instance with its unique data. See here, for an, legs are 2, for an2, legs are 4. Correct? So data is unique for this an and this an. Data is unique. Correct? So here is what you can say, a breakdown of the terminology. Once again, you will get to know here. Breakdown of the terminology. Here we can say, when you say class, we already have seen in detail above what do you mean by class. So class is a blueprint. Class is a blueprint or a template that defines the structure and the behavior of the object. It encapsulates, it combines, you can see encapsulates and combines. It combines properties and methods that are shared by all instances of the class. What is object? So when you say object, an instance of a class, see here, when you say object, an instance of a class, it is a concrete realization of the class representing specific entity with its own set of properties and behavior. An object is an instance of a class. It is a concrete realization of the class representing specific entity. Look at the an1. an1 is representing the animal. Animal related things are there in an1, right? Now object of a class, one and same, this and this point is one and same. When you create the instance of a class, you are creating object of that class actually. Object of a class, when you create the instance of a class, you are creating object of that class. This involves using a new keyword. This involves using new keyword. This involves using the new keyword to instantiate the class, which calls the class constructor to set up the initial state of the object, right? To set up the initial state of the object. So here we can say code, and you can simply write this line. initial state and this line into this line. Right, now we will see what is a new keyword. So we talked about object, basics of class, use of new keyword. Okay. So in the context of ES6, classes and object, the new keyword is used to create the instances of the class. It is an essential part when you do object instantiation. When you use new keyword followed by a class constructor, when you use new followed by a class constructor, it performs the several action to create and initialize the object, right? First is object creation. Here you can say object creation. The new keyword creates the empty object, setting this context. This is important. So everywhere inside this you use this. Who does that thing? New keyword does that thing. It sets the same thing happen in the constructor functions also. It sets the this keyword within the constructor to refer the newly created object. It sets the this keyword within the constructor. See what they are saying. It sets this keyword within the constructor to refer newly created object, which means that this. So whatever this object is there, you can consider whenever this line is getting executed, this would be replaced by something like this. an1 dot legs is equals to 4. It will happen something like this. an1 dot legs. That's what it does, right? That's what it does internally. Okay, constructor invocation. What it does? It does constructor invocation. The constructor function, or the class constructor is then invoked with this context set to the new object, right? The constructor function or the class, so just remove this. The class constructor is then invoked with this context to the new object. Here implicit return. If constructor function or the class construction, if the, here you can say, if the class constructor does not explicitly return another object, the new expression automatically returns the newly created object. It will return what? Newly created object. So again, we can use one of the code snippet over here. We have this much class. We have this much class and new animal. Okay. Using here you can say, using new with a class simplifies the process of creating and initializing the objects, providing a cleaner syntax compared to the older patterns involving constructor functions and prototypes. It aligns more closely with the traditional class-based programming languages and enhances the readability of the object creation in the JavaScript. More concise way to read the things is this, right? So we have seen object, we have seen constructor over here, a special method of a class, automatically calls. Basics of the class we have covered over here. Correct? Classes and objects. Any question?
Sir, in the older new keyword using and the ES6 is also same in the prototype and classes.
Yeah, same. No difference. But instead there we have used constructor function. Here we have used classes and objects. Classes, ES6 classes. That is the only difference. Any other question?
No, sir.
Okay. So we have seen classes and objects over here. Classes and objects over here. Okay, classes and objects. Okay, we need to create a page over here. Page, empty page. Basics of class. Then we have page. Now object oriented principles. Object oriented principles. So what do you mean by object oriented principles? Yeah. What do you mean by object oriented principles? Object oriented principles. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So how do you define object oriented principles? Do you know this thing or not?
No, sir.
Okay. So when you say object oriented principles, remember that object oriented principles is one of the programming pattern where we give focus on the classes and objects. Where we give focus on what? Classes and objects. Okay. So there are four pillars. There are four pillars of object oriented principles. So when you say object oriented principles, try to understand object-oriented principles revolve around the concept of classes and objects. Object-oriented principles is a programming paradigm that is centered around the concept of objects. Object represents the real world entities. We have seen what do you mean by objects. Object represents real world entities and that are the instances of the classes, which serves as blueprint or the template. The object is designed to organize the code. Object-oriented principles are designed to organize the code in a way that models the structure and the behavior of the entities in a program. So it is a good programming practice actually. Object-oriented principles are what? Good programming practice. So everything should be thought in the terms of objects. So whenever you say object-oriented principles, you need to think everything in the terms of object, right? You need to think everything in the terms of objects. Now whenever you say object-oriented principles, there are four pillars of object-oriented principles. First, encapsulation, or here I can say H2. Encapsulation. Then inheritance. Polymorphism. Abstraction. So when you say object oriented principles, it is a different way of programming. You need to think everything. So far you have written everything in one script. Can you see this?
Yes.
Here also everything is written in one script.
Yes.
But object-oriented principle says that you need to think your program, you need to think your application in the terms of classes and objects. Everything, whatever you type, you need to think in the terms of objects and the classes. Just we can say pillars of object-oriented principles. These are the four pillars of object-oriented principles. So whenever you design anything, you need to remember about these things in detail. We'll see what do you mean by encapsulation and other things. So when you say encapsulation is one of the fundamental part. Encapsulation. So let me go here. 43, new file, OOP or encap.js. So in the encapsulation, here I can say class. See now, instead of you should think in the terms of script, you should think in the terms of class. Now I want to, what is my requirement is that I should have a bank account and I should maintain the bank balance. I should maintain what? Bank balance. I should maintain the bank balance. and I should perform the deposit, withdraw, balance, inquiry operations, right? So you should look at this. So you can implement this without the class also, right? So you need to do withdraw, deposit, check balance operations on the bank account. This is the requirement. You can do this thing without the script, without the class also, just writing everything in the script. But instead of this, you can say bank account. I can create a class called as bank account, and into that constructor I would be having over here, and this dot balance would be state is equals to this lance, and here we can say balance, or I will change the variable name just to show you this can work. Initial balance is equals to what? Initial balance, right? Now there would be three methods: deposit, and here we can say amount, then withdraw, amount, and check balance. There will be these three important methods. See, you can write this thing without the class also. Simply one let you will define let balance is equals to 0, then separate function deposit, function withdraw, check balance. That is the bad idea. If you want to maintain the system at the greater level or more complex level, you should have something called as class. That is very important, right? Okay, now you can perform the operations, right? You can perform the operations. So here you can say this dot balance is equals to this dot balance plus amount. This is exactly opposite operation of the withdraw, minus, and check balance console.log. Here we can say console.log, or we can say simply return this dot balance. Return what? This dot balance. So we can create the object const BA bank account is equals to new bank account. Initial balance we can say 500 rupees. Then we can say console.log balance $BA dot. Now see, I can directly access balance BA dot balance. Problem, this shouldn't be happening, because we have a dedicated method to get the balance. That is nothing but what? Check balance. But I'm directly accessing the variable. Which means that I can change the balance directly also like this. This shouldn't happen. This shouldn't happen. This is the breaking of one of the pillar of object-oriented principles. We'll discuss that. Okay, now this is bad. This shouldn't happen. This is problem. Okay, now let's try to withdraw BA dot, because we don't need to handle these things in this way. That's why we have created methods like deposit, right? If you directly access balance like this will create a problem. And that's why accessing the state, I'm saying accessing the state directly should not happen. Deposit 500 rupees. Again, check the balance. This is not a problem. This is a correct. We can say correct it should happen like this. Okay. Similarly, withdraw the balance, withdraw, and again we can check the balance. 500. Let's withdraw 10 rupees. Let's see what happens. Node encap.js. Initial balance is this. It is printing this 500. Then it is printing this 500. That is okay. Then balance become 900. Because of this, it has increased 9 plus. It has increased like this. So this balance is coming after depositing the money, and this balance is coming after withdrawing the money. So calculations are correct.
Yes.
Right? Now see, whenever you look at this code, you clearly understand what is happening. Excluding this line, because this is bad. You shouldn't access this thing directly. Right? Now, so what we need to do, our state, see what is the principle? The object state needs to be accessed only within the class. Object state needs to be accessed only within the class, which means that this dot balance shouldn't be accessible outside something like this. So if you want to access this balance, you need to use one of the method, right? If you need to access the state, you should use one of the method. You should use what? One of the method that you have, but this directly access is bad. Now we need to have the meaning of this line. We need to have the private members. Hash, I can say hash balance. I do something like this, and here I can say hash balance, hash, hash, hash. Everywhere wherever you have used balance, just make hash. Okay, now if you can see hash balance, hash balance. So everywhere you have used hash, hash, hash. Now if you try to use it, can you see the difference? Balance undefined. So this is not accessible directly. Can you see here? So here balance is not undefined, balance is 100. And can you see now check balance? When you do the check balance, it is returning what? 500. And that's why calculations are different. So what you did, you made private variable or private state over here. So this can be accessed. The hash over here says that this would be accessed only and only inside the class. Hello?
Yes, sir.
This hash made it private, and here is the answer. Clearly you can see the first thing is undefined. So this is also not happening, right? This 900 is also not happening, or that is happening. So here undefined. So answer of this undefined, this dot balance is 900.
Balance 500. Then deposit 500.
So you already have 500, which means that this is not considered.
Yes.
Otherwise,
Then again deposit 500.
Again deposit 500. Here we have this 500, this 500, which means that 1000. Balance is 1000. And then withdrawn 10 rupees. 10. Which means that this is not getting considered. Why? because of this hash.
Made private.
Yeah. So who said that this is a problem? Who said that this is a correct? And who said that this shouldn't happen? One of the pillar of object oriented principle, encapsulation. Now, encapsulation, let us see. Encapsulation, what it says, encapsulation is one of the four fundamental principles of object oriented principles and involves building the data attributes and method functions that can operate on the data into the single unit of the class. Everything should happen into the object or into the class. This concept, here you can say, this concept aims to hide the internal details of an object and expose only necessary details to the world. So encapsulation provides the several benefits including the data protection, modularity, flexibility and the design. You getting my point? Encapsulation. Hello?
Yes.
Encapsulation. What is happening in the encapsulation? So this data needs to be handled by only and only one of the method. That's it. That's it. That's the encapsulation is. Now, when you say encapsulation, it provides following features like data hiding. Here we can say data hiding, H3, H access control, H3 modularity, H3 flexibility and maintenance, data hiding. So we have seen what do you mean by data hiding, right?
Yes.
Balance is not directly accessible. Data hiding. Encapsulation. Encapsulation hides the internal state of the object, meaning that the details of how data is stored and manipulated are not directly accessible outside the object. This helps, can you see here? This helps unauthorized access. So we want to work with the balance only by means of deposit and withdraw method. If you want to change the balance, use deposit and withdraw methods. This direct access is not allowed because that is collapsing your logic, right? Now you can say access control, access to the internal state, state of an object is controlled through use of the access modifiers. Hash we have used over here. Meaning of the hash is what? Private.
Yes.
So in JS, we use hash before the state to make it private. If hash
is sir, this hash is access modifier.
Access modifier, correct. If hash is missing, it is what? Public.
Public.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Modularity. Here you can say encapsulation. A single unit. Encapsulation promotes the modularity by organizing the related data and methods into the single unit. If you want to access this bank account, BA is the only way, right? Into the single unit. This modular structure, here you can say, this modular structure makes it easier to manage and maintain the code, as changes to one part of the system are less likely to impact on the other parts. Because if you change something in this class, it will not impact on another class. That's what we are saying over here. Then flexibility and maintenance. Because of the internal implementations are hidden, because the internal implementations are hidden, changes to the internal representation of the data or the implementation of the methods can be made without affecting to the external code that uses the class. This allows more flexible, which means that this deposit, you don't need to change it over here, which means that if you want to check if amount is less than or equal to 0, right, less than or equal to 0, you should give console.log invalid amount. So to change this, you didn't change this line of code, right? But you simply change the method of the deposit. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
And same, less than 0, invalid amount. Now see, you change the deposit and withdraw, but this didn't impact on these two methods. These calls, you don't need to change the calls.
Yes.
And that's what is nothing but what the encapsulation is. So here we can add the code for encapsulation and wind up today's session. Encapsulation.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
This is all about encapsulation. Tomorrow we'll start the session with inheritance polymorphism.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I'm disconnecting.
Yes, sir.